From obscurity to infamy, in just 4 years, this man was responsible for the most evil acts ever committed by a nation. He led his country to war against Europe and changed the course of human history forever. As Allied troops closed in on the German capital, and it became clear that his forces were losing the war, he took his own life rather than surrender to the advancing Soviets. In 1913, he moved to the city after failing to get into art school in Vienna. From there, he quickly consolidated power and established a totalitarian dictatorship. He dissolved the Reichstag, the German parliament, and established a one-party state under the Nazi banner. Any opposition to the new regime was crushed, and those who resisted were sent to concentration camps where they were persecuted, tortured, and often killed. The Germans suffered a devastating defeat at Stalingrad, and the Allies landed in Italy, opening a second front against the Germans. From that point on, it was a battle to the death, as the German army fought desperately to hold back the advancing Allies. In 1945, the Red Army entered Germany from the east, and the Western Allies advanced from the west. Hitler's bunker became his final stand as he refused to surrender. On April 30th, as the Soviets closed in, he shot himself in the head rather than live to see another day. With Hitler dead, the Nazi regime collapsed and Germany surrendered unconditionally on May 8, 1945, ending World War II. The economy was completely reorganized along Nazi lines with government direction of all aspects of industry, labor, and agriculture. He rose to power because of the instability of the times and the willingness of the German people to follow a strong leader. It is a cautionary tale for all of us that no matter how bad things seem, there is always hope if we are willing to look for it. In the end, Hitler's legacy is one of hate, destruction, and genocide. He was responsible for some of the worst atrocities in human history, and his name has become synonymous with evil. But perhaps his greatest crime was that he showed us that even in the darkest of times, hope is never lost. We can always choose to be better than our circumstances and strive to make the world a better place. That is why it is so important that we remember what he did and ensure that it never happens again. Public works programs were created to put people back to work, and the cult of the leader reached new heights. Soon, Hitler was seen as a godlike figure by his followers, and statues of him were erected across the nation, and spent the early part of World War I working as a messenger and office clerk for a German military munitions company. A wave of anti-Jewish violence swept the country and thousands of Jewish businesses were destroyed. The following year, Hitler announced the conscription of all able-bodied men into the German military. This greatly expanded the size of the German army and set the stage for war. In 1938, Hitler annexed Austria and the Sudetenland region of Czechoslovakia without any declaration of war. He then demanded the rest of Czechoslovakia, and when the French and British refused to give it to him, invaded Poland on September 1, 1939, starting World War II. Within 2 weeks, France and Britain declared war on Germany. After Germany's defeat in the war, Hitler, now an Austrian citizen, returned to his homeland full of resentment towards the Treaty of Versailles. They fought against a coalition of allies that included Belgium, Canada, Denmark, France, Luxembourg, the Netherlands, Norway, Poland, and Yugoslavia. By 1941, Germany had conquered most of Western Europe and the Low Countries, as well as large parts of Russia. But it was about to suffer its first major defeat at the Battle of Moscow. Although Hitler did not personally fight in World War II, he played an active role in military affairs, meeting with generals and issuing orders to troops. He had complete control over the German military and its actions. At its peak, the German military controlled around 70% of Europe. But after suffering several defeats by Soviet forces, Hitler became increasingly paranoid and isolated. He appointed trusted party members to key positions in the military and government, creating a close circle of confidants who shared his extreme views. These inner sanctum members were willing to do whatever it took to please Hitler and keep themselves in power. They included Joseph Goebbels, the Minister of Propaganda, Heinrich Himmler, the head of the SS, and Hermann Göring, the Commander-in-Chief of the Luftwaffe. Together, they oversaw the systematic persecution and murder of millions of Jews, Roma, homosexuals, and other undesirables throughout German-occupied Europe. Under their watch, the Nazi regime became one of the most brutal and inhumane in history, which placed sole blame for the conflict on the Germans and forced them to cede territory and disarm. It was during this time that he developed his extremist nationalist views, and began to blame Jews for Germany's problems. This led him to join the German Workers' Party in 1921, which he soon renamed the National Socialist German Workers' Party, or Nazi Party. At its core was a group of disgruntled veterans from World War I, who wanted revenge against the powers that had defeated their beloved Germany. Hitler attracted people to the party with promises of national rejuvenation through extreme economic nationalism and the violent overthrow of the Weimar Republic. Germany's fledgling democracy. His book, Mein Kampf, outlined his radical vision for the country and served as the blueprint for the future Nazi state. It detailed his plan to expand German territory to create a new, greater Germany that would be free of Jews, communists, and other undesirables. He believed that Germans were part of a master race known as the Aryans, who were destined to rule over others. The Nazis also embraced a form of nationalism known as corporatism, which promoted national unity under a totalitarian one-party state run by the charismatic leader. Hitler was the perfect embodiment of this ideology, as a skilled orator. He was able to win over the hearts and minds of millions of Germans who saw him as their savior from the turmoil of the Great Depression. By ending his life, Hitler also ended the Nazi regime, the political party he formed with a few dozen like-minded individuals in 1920. Within 25 years, they had taken over Germany and plunged the world into the deadliest conflict it had ever seen. But who was he? On April 30th, 1945, Adolf Hitler shot himself in the head alongside his wife Eva Braun in his private bunker beneath the Chancellery in Berlin. Although Hitler was born in Austria, his rise to power began in Munich, the capital of Bavaria. By 1933, the Nazi Party was the largest in Germany, and Hitler was appointed Chancellor of Germany by President Paul von Hindenburg. But Hitler wasn't done yet. In 1935, he passed the Nuremberg Laws, which stripped Jews of their citizenship and prohibited them from marrying or having sexual relations with non-Jews. The German army swept through Poland and other European countries with ease. In 1943, the tide of the war began to turn. Although he is remembered as a monster, it is important to remember that Hitler was once an unknown nobody. If you want to know more about World War II, check out the playlist in the description. And don't forget to subscribe for more videos. Thanks for watching.